Hello friends, this video on comparing quantities part 1 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Topics to be covered in this lesson are introduction, comparing quantities, ratio, percentage, conversion of percentage into fractions, conversion of fractions, ratios and decimals into percentages, increase or decrease as percent, prices related to buying and selling of items, profit or loss percentage, principal amount and simple interest. Sometimes it happens that you stand with your elder or younger sibling and you ask who is taller out of the two of you. So what are you trying to ask basically? Whose height is more? So basically you are trying to compare your height with that of your sister. So let us say that if your sister is say 138 centimeters tall, let's say that's the height of your sister, and your height is 125 centimeters. So this is you and this is your elder sister. So these are your heights. Now when you ask who is taller, what are you trying to ask? Basically, whose height is more? So you are basically trying to compare these two numbers, 138 and 125. So out of these two numbers, whichever is more, that person is taller. Similarly, sometimes once you get your report card, you tend to compare it with somebody in your neighborhood, maybe a friend who is studying in a different school. So he had appeared in a different examination conducted by a different school. So you see that when you look at your report card, you have scored 70 out of 100. When you look at your friend's report card, you see that he has scored 80, which is definitely more than 70, but he has scored it out of 200. Now, if you want to compare that who scored better or who performed better, because in this case you just can't compare 70 and 80, even though 80 is greater than 70, but we just can't compare the numerators, right? In this case both of these are fractions, so you have a numerator, you have a denominator. Now since the denominator in both the cases are different, because the total marks out of which the examination was conducted was different for your school and your friend's school. So how would you compare this? Now in the report card, in one corner you would have seen that your total score is expressed as percentage, where it says that you have scored 70% marks. Similarly, in your friend's report card, it says that your friend has scored 40% marks. Now when you look at this, that is when you realize that you have actually performed better, even though the total marks scored by you was lesser than your friend, but overall you scored a better percentage than your friend. So that way you can say that you performed better than your friend. Now in each of these examples, what were we actually trying to do? We were trying to compare quantities. So in the first example, we were trying to compare heights of your sister and yours. In the second example, you were trying to compare the score of yours with that of your friend. So in this lesson, we will learn more about comparing quantities. That is, what are the various ways by which we can compare two different quantities. Let us look at another example. So here on the screen, you see three kids. Now let us name them. Let us call them A, B and C. So these are the three kids and all of them are hungry. Each of them is given a pizza, as you can see on the screen. So each of them have been given a pizza of the same size. Now the entire pizza, if you cut that pizza into equal slices, then you get 5 equal slices, like that is also visible on the screen. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So if you divide it equally into 5 equal slices, this is how it would be. And each of this pizza is given to all the three kids. Now it is observed that A eats 1 slice out of the 5 slices. So basically A eats 1/5 of the pizza. When it comes to B, it is seen that B eats 3 out of the 5 slices. So he eats 3/5 of the pizza. When it comes to C, he eats 4 slices out of the 5 slices. So he eats 4/5 of the pizza. Now, if you are asked that, can you tell me who ate more? Now, that's quite evident because C ate 4 slices of the pizza, so 4 is greater than 3, which in turn is greater than 1. Right? So we observe that 4 is greater than 3, which is greater than 1. Therefore, 4 by 5 is greater than 3 by 5, which in turn is greater than 1 by 5. Now, why could we just compare the numerators in this case? Because the denominators were same. So all of them have the same denominators. So that means we can say that 4 by 5 is greater than 3 by 5 is greater than 1 by 5. So that means we can say that C ate maximum and A ate minimum. So what did I do here in this example? Here again we try to compare fractions. So 1 by 5, 3 by 5, 4 by 5, these are all fractions, and we just try to compare the fractions to find out which one is bigger and which one is smaller. So this is yet another example where we are trying to compare quantities. Let's look at another interesting example. So what do you see on the screen? You see a couple going on a trip, a road trip in their car. Now, they start from their home thinking that they'll go on a long drive. Now, it's quite difficult for one person to drive the entire distance because that's a long distance. So, what they decide is the wife, let's call them Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So, let's give them a fancy name. Now, Mrs. Smith, she drove for 3/4 of the distance. So whatever the total distance was, she covered 3/4 of that entire distance, and Mr. Smith covered the remaining 1/4 of the distance. So that's how they divided the driving amongst each other, so that none of them should get stressed out. Now, if you are asked that who covered maximum distance, who drove for the major part of the distance, whether it was Mr. Smith or it was Mrs. Smith. So basically we again need to compare two fractions. One is 3 by 4 and the other one is 1 by 4. Right? So again we know 3 by 4 is greater than 1 by 4 because the denominators are the same and the numerator 3 is greater than the numerator 1. Therefore we can say that Mrs. Smith Mrs. Smith covered more distance. So again, so here, what are we comparing? We are comparing the distance. Now, instead of saying 3/4 of the distance or 1/4 of the distance, we could have also mentioned it like this, that maybe Mrs. Smith, she covered 75 kilometers and Mr. Smith covered 25 kilometers. And the total distance they actually traveled was 100 kilometers. So Mrs. Smith covered 75 kilometers and Mr. Smith covered 25 kilometers. So that would again mean the same thing. So basically what are we trying to compare here? So we are comparing distance. In this case we were comparing fractions. So it doesn't matter whether these are integers or fractions, but when we try to compare two quantities, we should be able to compare any number with another. You think from a shopkeeper's point of view. Let's say that you are observing two different shopkeepers, shopkeeper 1 and shopkeeper 2. So let's say that shopkeeper 1 and 2, they are selling different items. Maybe shopkeeper 1 is selling stationery items, maybe shopkeeper 2 is selling grocery items. So they are actually selling different items at different rates, and both of them are making some profit. So let's say that shopkeeper 1 is making a profit of 12% and shopkeeper 2 is making a profit of 11%. Now what do we mean by 12% profit, 11% profit? That basically means that any shopkeeper, whenever he sells some goods, he also buys those goods from some other wholesale market, right? That's how the real scenario works. So basically he also pays a price and buys those things, and then he sells them at a higher price, and that's how he makes profit. So here 12% and 11%, they indicate the percentage of profit that they make. So instead of writing the first shopkeeper makes 12,000 profit, so instead of saying that, if you say he makes 12% profit, so that is like more sensible and more generic to express how much profit the shopkeeper is making. However, in this chapter itself, we are going to talk about profit percentage in more detail. So there you will understand what exactly is profit percentage. Now here in this example, if this is the data given to you, that shopkeeper 1 makes 12% profit, shopkeeper 2 makes 11% profit. Now if you are asked that who is making more profit, 1 or 2? So what will you compare? So you will basically compare these two percentages, that is 12%, 11%, and you find that 12% is greater than 11%. Therefore, you would say that shopkeeper 1 is making more profit. So in this case, what did we compare? So we compared percentages here. So that's what I was telling you, that if there are various ways by which you can compare two different quantities. Thank you. Please visit examfear.com for free quality education. You can learn with a simple 4-step learning process wherein you can watch video lessons, you can ask your questions, you can refer notes, and you can take a free online test. We have content for class 6 to 12 on physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology along with practical videos. So please subscribe to our channel for daily updates. Thank you.